Welcome to the Book Faire podcast. My name is Anthony, and this week we have an interview with author and illustrator and musician Steve Giddings. There's also going to be a look at some new releases out for this week. However, there will be no news stories or new episode for the next couple of weeks, as I'll be taking the rest of the summer off to focus on online classes. Let's begin with our interview with Steve Giddings, author, illustrator, and musician behind Mikey's Place and Mikey's New Friends. Hello, Steve. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Can you start us off by introducing yourself to the audience and the series of books that we'll be discussing today?
So my name is Steve Giddings. I hail from Prince Edward Island in Canada, and we'll be talking about Mikey's Place and the newest book in that series called Mikey's New Friends. And it's about a microphone trying to find his place in the musical landscape, finding his place, and basically talks about themes of, belonging and friendship and, wanting to make sure that everyone finds their place in the world, even if it takes a little more time.
And these ideas of belonging, what exactly is it about Mikey that makes it difficult for him to find a place at first?
Well, at the beginning of the book, he tries a few different things. He's in a microphone band, and then he goes into the opera, and it's just not for him. He realizes that, these are not his. He loves to sing, but he doesn't realize that these are not the places for him until a little bit later in the book, when he finds a friend who is a guitar, and they form a rock band together. And throughout that, they learn about music theory a little bit, and they learn about how the instruments function in the band. Now, what I kind of was thinking when I wrote these books was, as a music teacher myself, there's a lot of kids who like lots of different kinds of music, and in school, it's often band and choir and very traditional kind of sit down, play the notes kind of music, which is great and has its place for sure. But when, I see a lot of kids who really blossom in like a rock band setting or another type of music, because it's very different type of music making. And those kids are able to find their place in the music in school who haven't before. So seeing those kids blossom into musicians that they wanted to be kind of helped me focus on maybe helping inspire kids to find their place in the music landscape as well, in school and out of school, because there's lots of different ways to make music and connect with what you want to be and what you want to do, and this is just one way to do it.
And when it comes to finding your own place in the music landscape, is that something that you drew inspiration from in your personal life?
Well, in a way, yeah, because I grew up doing music in school, but I also was taking like piano lessons here and there. And as I was going along, I did violin in school, and then I went and did band, the traditional band, and I loved doing that. And, but I also was starting to learn drums outside of school, kind of mostly by ear. And so I felt I love doing both of those things and playing in rock bands on drums, but also doing wind band stuff and, jazz band on trombone specifically. And they're very different worlds, but I love both for different reasons. And when I was going into learning how to be a music teacher, one of the things I wanted to do was be able to bridge those gaps between, learning by ear and learning by note, and being able to take those together and maybe get some new kids involved with music in school. So yeah, like as my training was going along, that's something I really wanted to strive to do.
And not just in music, but in every subject, different people learn in different ways. Is this approach to how you learned music and how you teach music, is that something that students and educators can apply to other subjects as well?
Of course, like there's so many different ways to learn the same thing. I don't learn it the same way as you would or anyone else would. So being able to do it in a multimodal approach, or being able to do it in many different ways, teaching the same concepts many different ways, is so helpful, because we used to talk a lot about, visual, kinesthetic, and auditory. We don't talk about that much anymore, but I do find that, if you see it, hear it, and do it, then you will learn it a lot easier. It's not about like presenting it one way and then getting to do. You have to get up and do stuff, right? So when you're learning rock music, it's very different. It's not like you don't do. For example, you're not going to do. You could do a pop arrangement of a rock tune in your wind band, but it's just not the same. You're not going to get the same experience by learning in a rock band. So, yeah, it's super important across all subjects to be able to be multidisciplinary and learn in many different ways, and teach in many different ways.
Now, Steve, you mentioned see it, hear it, do it, and this makes a wonderful transition into the interactive edition of Mikey's Place. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So Mikey's Place, I thought it would be great if, you could hear everything going on in there. So I worked with Sarah Gulish at F Flat Books. I think she's based out of Philadelphia. And we collaborated on this book project, which is like an interactive flip book. So we took all the pages from Mikey's Place. I recorded all the sounds. So basically, there are videos on how to play the instruments as you go through, explanations on other little things as you go through. But then also, as you click on the characters or tap the characters, they make a sound. And pretty much everything in the book makes a sound. If you can see it, it makes a sound. And as you go along, it shows you what the sound of the instruments make, and asks questions, and helps you understand what's going on in the book a little more than just reading it. And at the end, there's a game called Mikey's Beats, where you can actually play music with the characters in the book, which was a kind of collaboration with me and Scratch. If you're familiar with Scratch, I borrowed code from a pre-existing app and kind of developed my own app that was based off of that one. So it's a much more immersive than just reading the book.
I had a lot of fun with Mikey's Beats at the end when I was flipping through it. I tried mixing and matching everything to see if I can make something discordant, and you did a wonderful job of making everything sound cohesive.
Yeah, well, that's what I tried to do. Sometimes what the kids do though is they'll take all of the Mikeys and put all 5 Mikeys in one place, or all 4 Mikeys all at the same time, and it still sounds good, but it's a little more dissonant than you might want to expect. But that was kind of the goal. You can mix and match everything, and it still sounds good, and kind of gets kids creating music instantly that sounds good, and they feel good about it.
So, have you been using Mikey's Place and this interactive book in education already?
Yeah, I was teaching kindergarten to grade 6 for a long time in the province I'm in, and I use that quite a bit with the younger kids. I read through it with the older kids just because we were doing some literacy initiatives, and I thought it'd be fun if I read my book to them and see what they thought. But the younger kids got really into it because there's also some coloring books that go along with it. There was a coloring book recently released with it as well, but before that there was a few coloring sheets that the kids can interact with, and teaching materials that you could download from the website as well. So I used those and kind of trial run them with my own students.
And real quick, where is all that information available?
Oh, sorry. It's so stevesmusicroom.com will be my main site, but if you go to stevesmusicroom.com/Mikey's-place, then you get all of the Mikey stuff there. And you should be able to find it in the drop-down menu if you find just the website too.
What has the response been with students? What are some things that you've learned, some insights, some feedback? What has worked? What maybe didn't work as well in showing this to younger readers?
Some of the I found I had to explain a couple of words a little more because there's kind of some words in there that are very nichey. Like if you use the word vox, which means vocals, but most people wouldn't know that. So, and I did kind of anticipate that because it's kind of a nichey word for like in the music industry. And there's a couple of words like that I threw in there that I felt needed a bit of explaining as I was going along. But again, I anticipated that. And there's definitions that you can download from the website. some of the pictures, which I did all the illustrations myself as well, but some of the pictures, there there was one part where the guitar was turned around, and the kids were like, "Where's his face?" They didn't quite understand that he was turned around and that he can like move. But every time I read that, that was the first reaction was, "Where's his face?" Um, but yeah, and they loved being able to anticipate some of the rhyming that I was going through, which was good. So I was able to anticipate what they were going to anticipate, with some of the rhymes, which was nice.
And when it came to the guitar being turned around, were you able to then show them a guitar and show the backside to show them how that worked in 3D space?
Well, yeah, exactly. And like this is the back of an electric guitar. This is what it looks like. It has like a place to put batteries sometimes, and I know your listeners can't see, but this is the guitar that the guitar in Mikey's place was modeled off of. It's like an orangey red kind of hue to it. Um, and so I was able to bring that guitar in and show them the back of it and what it looked like and all that. So and they kind of got it after that. But that was every time I read it, that was the reaction. I thought that was kind of funny.
So, Steve, you had talked a little bit about your own history with music as well as with being an educator. Is there a moment that sticks out as the point where you decided that this needed to be a story or that this was something that you wanted to work on as a passion project?
Well, it's interesting because I started kind of getting into the publishing realm with nonfiction music teacher books, just kind of teaching teachers new skills. One was how to teach a rock band, because that's not a skill that a lot of music teachers come out of teachers college with. Um, so that was something new, and then that developed into a couple of different music teacher books. But then I guess part I remember is I was out for a run, and I was thinking like, what would it be like if I wrote a children's book, and what would it be about? And when I was a kid, I like 10, 11, 12 years old, I wanted to be a children's book illustrator for the rest of my life. So I was like really into drawing and really into coloring, and I loved that stuff. And that was going to be my gig. I was convinced. But then I got into music and teaching, and that kind of took a back seat. But I remember thinking this was something I wanted to do as a kid, and I'm like, why not? What would it be about? I started thinking about ideas and like, what about a microphone that, tries all these things? And I remember going through that process in my head, and then I kind of sat down and came up with a bunch of ideas and started writing. Um, and then when I started doing the illustrations, it was kind of surreal because it was almost like a childhood dream come true in a way, because like I said, I wanted to do that for the rest of my life when I was a kid. So kind of bringing it full circle and being able to do that was pretty awesome.
So, when it came to wanting to be an illustrator growing up and then kind of moving into music and then coming back to it, and it's like a dream come true, is there anything you'd like to instill in aspiring writers who feel like as they've moved into adulthood and worked a different job, is there anything you would like to give to them to help them find that space to be able to get back into being creative and writing?
Yeah, I mean, it gets harder as you get older with kids and everything, but I found if I, put time in and decide that, maybe 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, I'm just going to work, right? I'm just going to do my writing. Or maybe when the kids are outside playing, you can, just sit on the deck and just start writing. Even if I have my phone with me, I'll just like jot down ideas on my phone. Just start getting if something when inspiration, calls itself. If you have a phone or something, just write it down, record it, whatever. I find you do have to tell yourself that I'm going to block this time off. I'm going to write, and it could be just an hour a day, it could be half an hour a day. But at the end of the day, if you're doing it, it will get done, and if you prioritize it, it will get done. A lot of people say, "I'm going to write a book someday," and they'll say someday, but someday never comes, and then they're waiting for the quote unquote right time. The right time is like now or 20 years ago, you know. So the right time never really happens. You just got to do it, and that's just how things work. It's like if you think you should have done it, then you probably should have done it 20 years ago or like this second, So that's kind of how I think about it.
And you mentioned inspiration, and there are instruction materials along with the books that are currently available. Are there plans for upcoming books? Do you see Mikey expanding beyond music at any point, or any other subjects that he could be going into?
Well, he's kind of fixed on the social emotional learning kind of themes now about how to regulate emotions and all that. And I do see, a possible third or fourth book, um, and kind of coming up with these ideas to help kids navigate these big feelings. And I don't know. Who knows? I never say never because, Mikey could go into a different realm. He could stay where he is in music. He could start teaching other lessons about life. But I think in the end, he's gonna, hopefully help a lot of kids, navigate their big emotions.
So, like, there is something about the idea of emotions, big emotions, maybe having vocal outbursts that lend to a microphone character, and this may be a little more critical and a little more meta or in depth than a typical children's book is. But do you feel that Mikey being a microphone, do you feel like you've boxed yourself? Do you feel that you've boxed yourself into a niche with this character?
Um, Perhaps, yeah, because like it's harder to go outside of the music realm, being a microphone and kind of having all these friends as uh as characters, as musical characters. So I could see that for sure. But at the same time, it could go into he could become the poster microphone for confidence, and teaching about how to be confident and finding your place in anything, and could just be that source of inspiration. Because microphones are a little more versatile per se than a guitar or something, where a microphone can kind of be the poster child for public speaking or uh, it's not, anything like that. So it's I think him being a microphone is helpful, but it certainly can um, box him into a corner as well. So wait to be seen, I suppose.
Are there any ideas that you've been getting, any feedback from students that you've received that are things that you would like to incorporate into future books?
Well, I get my own kids to kind of read through the proofs before they're completely published, and they give me some feedback for sure. And there's nothing glaring that I think needs to be added in future books, but I do ask on my social media platforms, like who can Mikey meet next? My biggest one, my daughter is into recorder, and so she wants me to add a recorder character to the book. Um, which would be, I think it'd be awesome. And as long as we add future characters, there's so many musical characters we could add to make these stories come alive. So um, I'm up I'm up for criticisms. I'm up for suggestions. So if anyone has any, I would love to hear them.
And how does that feel having somebody, even if it's just your daughter or even if it's students at school that you read these to, how does it feel being able to say to them, that's an idea that I like a lot and I would love to bring that to life? Is that something that those children enjoy hearing?
No, I'm sure they do because that it means that their idea is validated. And I'm always a big advocate of student choice and student voice. So listening to their ideas is a big part of my teaching philosophy, and incorporating those ideas is part of that. So when they give me a suggestion, I'm saying that's a great idea. Maybe that'll be the next book or something like that, and their eyes light up. It's a great feeling.
Validating students' emotions and their desires is something that I talk about a lot on this podcast. It's something I'm also very passionate about. And through something like music education and in upper grades, also with electives, it does give a lot of freedom to students. Is that something that you see as a music educator? Do you see students being able to pick an instrument for themselves, giving them giving them that sense of agency? Do you see that empowering them?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, yeah, because kids can choose going into band here anyway, kids can choose the instrument that they want, that they think best speaks to them. And sometimes they might get their second choice instrument, and that ends up being the one that they are passionate about anyway. Um, you know, I do find though, when I was teaching elementary school, that there was a lot more choice for the kids because it wasn't limited to the wind band, but because they could choose ukulele, boomwhackers, guitar, hand drums, um, slide whistles, whatever. There was lots of choice there, and they could try as many as they want. And I think giving them that choice is what kind of makes them want to learn it, right? And it gives them that agency that you're mentioning on, and helps them to be better learners essentially because they're invested in the learning process at that point.
And it's not even just the different choice, it's also the idea of trying new things, because I'm sure there's a lot of instruments that students aren't familiar with or with the sounds that they make. Do you see them exploring these different things and trying new things as an educator?
Yeah, for sure. Kids like they want to know, what does that sound like? Like especially you really young kids, like they'll see a drum set and they'll be like wanting to hit it or scratch it or something, and they just want to know what sound it makes. They just can't help themselves. So there's definitely that. And there'd be kids like, I just want to play that because I want to know what it sounds like, you know? And so there's so much to explore, especially in an elementary school music program. Uh, and even a little bit in the band programs too, because sometimes there's some percussion instruments that they've never heard yet, right? And we can explore those together. So, yeah.
And I like to close out the podcast interviews with the same question for each guest, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say because you have such a breadth of uh, of expertise in your field as an educator. So I'm going to kind of allow this to be expanded a little bit more than usual. Steve, how do you see yourself and the work that you do as either a writer, a musician, or an educator?
That's tough because I think about this a lot, and I don't know if I have a straight answer, but um, eh, I hope that kids feel like they were able, like in my classroom anyway, that kids feel like they were able to do something special and were given choice and voice and felt like they were creative. Um, and I hope that with writing, people can see that, you know, it, because I have a lot of skills and I know that, and I want to make sure that people know and my students know that you can just, you don't have to just do sports or you don't have to just do music. You can do a lot of different things. I've done sports all my life too. I can do sports, I can do music, I can do writing, I can do drawing, I can do all these things. And I think I would love it if someone said, you know, well, like he can do all these things. Why can't I? Because like up here in Canada, we have a lot of hockey kids, hockey boys, and I want them to be able to realize that you can do hockey and music, or you can do hockey and drawing, or you can do all these things and still be, a great person and be able to be inspired and be able to do all these things and find joy in many things, which I think is really important because then you're always busy. I'm always busy at a new project because I have all of these skills that I can employ. And I think what's that old saying? How's it go? Jack of all trades, master of none. But then
Still better than a master of one.
yeah, exactly. That's the rest of it that no one ever says. So I think that's important. And I want kids to realize that when I'm teaching them, but also I want people to realize that you don't have to be a one-trick pony.
That was an interview with Steve Giddings. You can learn more about Steve and his work at stevesmusicroom.com. Next, we'll be taking a look at some notable releases out this week. But first, if you appreciate the work being done with the Book Faire podcast, there are a few ways to show your support. First, you can like, comment, favorite, subscribe, or follow the podcast wherever you are currently listening to help push it out to new listeners. Second, you can follow the podcast on Blue Sky at BookFairPod. You can also go to patreon.com/thebookfair to find episodes, generally posted early, as well as links to news sources used throughout the show. Lastly, the best way to support the Book Faire podcast is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Now, on with the show. Let's begin with new releases, starting with The Freedom Seeker by Ruchira Gupta. Gupta follows one immigrant child's experience attempting a dangerous border crossing to seek refuge in this wrenching family story. 12-year-old field hockey player Simi Singh and her Punjabi family have happily lived in Chandigarh, India all her life. Then her family is badly beaten by a member of a conservative group that's advocating to ban interfaith marriages, including that of Simi's Hindu Sikh Abu and Muslim Ami. After Abu applies for and is denied a visa to the United States, he instead opts to travel there via the Donkey Express, chartered planes that smuggle Punjabis to America illegally. Granted asylum in the US, Abu works to send money back for Ami and Simi's escape. But complications during her own journey to the US find Simi separated from her mother in Mexico. Gupta powerfully exposes how othering occurs via frank prose that details the rapid escalation of prejudice rhetoric in Simi's neighborhood, the brutal conditions of the border crossing, and the cruel political bureaucracy Simi contends with during her travels. This sobering novel's optimistic and steadfast tone, highlighted through Simi's self-determination and in joyful instances of kindness and connection, rings true across grim depictions of loss. This book is recommended for ages 8 to 12. Next up, The Library of Unruly Treasures by Jeanne Birdsall, illustrated by Matt Phelan. When neither of her parents are available to care for her, 11-year-old Gwen McKinnon is sent to Dalgety, Massachusetts to stay with her great-uncle Matthew, whom she's never met. Accustomed to her parents' unpleasant attitudes, Gwen is caught off guard by Uncle Matthew's kind nature. His sweet yet grumpy dog Pumpkin guides Gwen to the nearby library founded by her ancestors. There, Gwen visits the upstairs children's room in which kids under 6 claim to communicate with the Laducan, small mythical beings with eagle-like wings. Gwen is shocked to discover that she can see and hear them too. What's more, as a McKinnon, she has inherited her family's role as the liaison between human and Laducan kind. As Gwen learns of the Laducan's lore, which speaks of ravenous beasts and other perils she might endure to protect her loved ones, she fights despair over her imminent departure from Dalgety. Illustrations by Phelan, rendered in smudgy black and white pencil, portray people-focused scenes that complement themes of togetherness and courage throughout this cozy, standalone fantasy novel by Birdsall. Gwen's grappling with her ancestral destiny alongside conflicting feelings about her parents and upbringing are compassionately wrought across a tender story whose tones evokes the warmth of a much-needed hug. This book is recommended for ages 8 to 12. And lastly, The Love Club by Leo Min. The once tight-knit friend group, The Love Club, comprised of Liberty, O, Vera, and Elle, bonded over their experience with social rejection and a passion for gaming. But soon after Elle went missing, Liberty and Vera moved away, leaving O alone in Calendula, California. 3 years later, Liberty, Vera, and O meet again during their senior year. The trio's reunion is rigid until they visit their old clubhouse, in which they discover botanical fantasy video game Morning Glory, seemingly left for them by Elle. But Morning Glory is no ordinary game. Upon loading, the girls are transported into the game's digital landscape. As they explore, they realize the game is coded with each of their complicated histories, memories, and insecurities. While Liberty and Vera face their own challenges, O, who finds that she has no memory of the circumstances behind Elle's vanishing, sets about decoding cryptic messages about the game's true nature. Lushly detailed world-building by Min makes for an immersive adventure that explores hard truths and dangerous revelations about the Chinese-American characters' friendships and differing upbringings. Raw, emotive prose captures each girl's grappling with bullying, familial tumult, loneliness, and sexual, racial, and gender identity. This book is recommended for ages 14 and up. And this is going to conclude another shorter episode of the Book Faire podcast. Again, I'll be taking a couple of weeks off for the summer vacation, and hopefully we'll be returning in the fall with much more focused episodes. Thank you so very much for listening, and as always, I'll talk at you next time.